Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 935. I had the white pieces and started off with d4. And my opponent went c5, a little bit down the list here. And this is known as the Old Benoni. Here, we'll go forward a few moves and then I'll show the modern Benoni by comparison. So I push on with d5. He played d6. And here, unlike the modern Benoni, I actually have the choice of playing e4 as well as c4. It's interesting. Maybe e4 is a little bit more flexible. I may decide to bring the knight out in front of the c-pawn and leave this back, or I may decide to push it forward. But the way I played it, I committed to the c4 pawn move right away. And now he went e6 here, undermining the center. So let's back up for a second and let's show the modern Benoni. The modern Benoni is knight f6 first, after the main move c4, then play d5. Then play c5. And then after d5, there's two ways to go here. One is to play b5 for the bingo gambit, and the other way to play is e6. So this is the modern Benoni. And the key feature of it is the knight on f6, which is controlling the e4 square for the moment. So I can't get a pawn to e4 until I play knight c3 first. Whereas, as I said, in the other line, I could have gone for e4 right away. Anyway, they seem to be kind of similar. And there were places where we could have transposed into a modern Benoni, but my opponent avoided that knight f6 move throughout all of this. I went d5, went d6, went c4, and he went e6 right away. And we'll get back into the opening book, but he seems to have his own kind of unique way of playing this. Let's see, he just went ahead and took here. I took back, and then he went g6. So here's a point where if he had played knight f6, you see there's 888 games. That would be a way of transposing into the modern Benoni, knight f6 there. But as I said, he's not playing that. He's avoiding that knight f6 move. He played g6, and I get the move e4 in. And so this pawn structure, though, is very reminiscent of the modern Benoni. So that's what the old Benoni and the modern Benoni have in common, I guess. And once again, he avoids knight f6, plays bishop g7. I go knight f3, goes a6, I go a4. I want to keep control of this square, and I do have the idea of routing the knight around to the c4 square. It's a good square for that knight. In both the old Benoni and the modern Benoni, after this exchange has taken place and this pawn is weak, you can gang up on it with a bishop here and a knight here. So anyway, he played bishop g4, an interesting idea. He just gets rid of this knight. And I played the move bishop to e2. The chess engine actually wasn't too happy with that move. It preferred, we can see queen b3 is a suggestion here from the opening book. Kind of not worrying about the pawn damage over here because you've got the threat against the b pawn over here. It's an interesting way to play. The chess engine liked queen to d3. And then if he takes the knight, take back with the queen. And maybe it's better. I had, in the game, I played bishop to e2. And after the exchange, my bishop is out here. And I just have to retreat it back. So I kind of am wasting a tempo here compared to the suggestion of the chess engine. Let's see, he played knight d7 here. Yeah, and at this point we're just out of the book. I'll back up. He played knight to d7. And at this point we're just out of the book. Once again, he could have gone knight f6 and we would have been in kind of a normal position, but or at least one that's in the opening book. But he's keeping this diagonal free for the bishop. I mean, there's some sense to the way black is playing. It's a bit rare, it seems, but well, you know, it's as usual in the Benoni. Black is hoping for counterplay on the queen side, which is not easy to achieve if white plays correctly, and also white has control of the center and is building up for a kingside attack. So it's kind of a typical Benoni position in that respect, and the chess engine really prefers white in these positions by quite a bit. Although it didn't care for this h3 move. It thinks I should just keep developing with a move like bishop to g5, and let's see, if he brings his knight out, then just drop this back, my knight back to d2. So let me show that. Say I go here, he brings the knight out to block the pin, then just drop this knight back and force a trade of bishops let's see, yeah, he can't retreat in this case, so force a trade of bishops without displacing any of my pieces, and the knight, getting the knight out of the way so I can push the f-pawn forward. So I think that way of playing makes quite a lot of sense. The way I played, I mean, I eventually get those moves in, but it takes me time because I first have to get my bishop off of the f3 square. So he helps me out a little bit with knight e5, actually, since I want to move that bishop anyway. The chess engine thinks that black is pretty much equal here because of my slowness in the way I played this. It cost me some tempo. But it thinks that black should, develop this knight and get castled. So this is a bit dubious from black here. Continuing to play with the pieces that have already been developed while neglecting his development on the king side. But there's no immediate punishment, so I can't say it's a real blunder. And, well, the combination of knight e5 and queen a5, I have to say the chess engine did not like it at all, probably because he's taking too many risks by neglecting his development. I went ahead and castled here. He went knight e7, and I pushed on with f4. So typical ideas and a decent edge for white in this position now. Let's see, he dropped his knight back to d7, went bishop to d2, and he went queen to b6. And now here's one place where the chess engine would play a little more aggressively. I just went queen to c1. I was lining up, preparing to push the f-pawn forward and maybe exchange off this bishop here. But the chess engine likes this line, a5, and then, well, black could throw in this check first and move the queen, then bishop to c4. Now with this pawn on a5, this seems to be a decent square for the bishop, and I can think of pushing through the center here pretty soon, or maybe pushing with f5. It's always hard for me to decide. Often it's an idea to push f5 rather than to push e5, and I think that's what happened in the game, but a lot of times you want to try and set up that e5 push to take advantage of the weakness on d6. Anyway, in this position, I went queen to c1, and he went queen c7. One of the reasons didn't like queen c1 so much is he could have played f5 at this point and just shut down my idea of playing f5 and kind of made this queen and bishop battery look a bit silly. If he can shut down that diagonal, I can never do anything with it, and I would have to rearrange my pieces. But he went queen c7. I went bishop to e3. Rewind that. I went bishop to e3. I think maybe I'm trying to get my queen off the back rank so I can connect rooks. Forget what I was thinking there. He went castles. I went queen to c2. So I guess I've given up on that battery idea. He goes knight to c8. Knight c8 wasn't liked by the chess engine. It thinks, let's back up, thinks that rook a to e8 is better. And putting a rook on the e file makes a lot of sense. And especially if he's going to be maneuvering this knight around, do it now before you block the rook in with the knight. Makes good sense. Anyway, he played knight c8. I went bishop to f3. Yeah, here's a place where the chess engine would start pushing the pawns. So I'm always kind of looking in the Benoni. I never know quite when to know. I never know quite when I should push those pawns and which pawns I should push. Here the chess engine thinks I should push the g-pawn and just build up this huge, let's see, instead of bishop f3, push the g-pawn. Say he goes rook e8 now to try and slow down the center and push on with g5 and go for this, this looks like a big clamp on the king side. Maybe I can even push the h-pawn forward and open up the h-file with the bishop looking and supporting the pawn coming to h5. Interesting play. Anyway, I went bishop f3 there. He went knight to a7, so he's continuing his knight maneuver. Went rook a to e1, bringing the rook to the center. Goes b5. And here's another place where I could push, and now it likes the e5 push. So let's show an example of an e5 pawn push. And one idea is, well, if he takes the pawn, that doesn't really lead to much. It doesn't lead to much, just an isolated pawn for him here because I can take back with the queen or the knight. But if he pushes on, to kick my knight, the knight has a good square on e4. And now we can start to see some of the tactics working in the Benoni, particularly taking advantage of the bishop on this long diagonal. So say he takes the e-pawn, which was given as one of the best moves there for black. I can push on with d6, hitting the queen, taking advantage of my knight that's here on e4. The queen moves, and I can grab a pawn here, and of course he can take back, but I've unleashed an attack on his rook as well. Oh, actually he can't take back. I've got the bishop on it. So yeah, I'm just grabbing a pawn, and at the same time I'm hitting his rook there. So that's a winning breakthrough for white. So that's an example of the e5 breakthrough. It's particularly after you've maneuvered the bishop to the f3 square. It seems to work pretty nicely. Anyway, I didn't see that. I took here, and let's see, he took with the knight. I kept taking. And then I went queen d2. This was not liked. Once again, Chess Engine likes the move e5. And we're now getting to the point where maybe this is my last time to play a breakthrough, but once again there's this idea of d6. With the double attack, the bishop is hitting the rook, and the pawn is hitting the queen, so that wins the exchange. Rook d1 first, chasing the queen away, and then taking on a8 was the way the Chess Engine wanted to play that. So I'm up the exchange here. And after he takes back, I guess I'll grab that pawn in the center. He still has a majority on the queen side. He has a pawn in exchange for the losing the exchange, but it should be good for white. Instead, I played the move queen d2, and now the tides turn, and we start to see the advantages of the Benoni. He starts to mobilize his queen side majority with the help of some piece threats over here on the queen side. Let's see, I have to bring my rook back to defend. So when I bring my rook back, and I'm losing the ability to push these pawns forward so easily. So if you can hold off, if you're playing the Benoni, if you can hold off that king side attack and then get your counterplay going on the queen side, this can be quite a strong opening for black. And black is keeping the advantage through this part of the game. I'm trying to open up this file or this line for my bishop, maybe trade that bishop off, and he just allows it. So I get rid of that dark squared bishop, which could have been a problem ganging up on my b2 pawn there. So I'm going to try and hold the line there, but this is all good for black. Let's see, he played it's my turn here. I played f takes g6. He takes back, brought my queen over. I'm still trying to get counterplay on the king side, which is as good an idea as any. I can't actually hold the... I'm trying to get counterplay on the king side. I can't actually hold the queen side anymore. Black is really breaking through with these passed pawns over here. So he didn't actually need this queen retreat. He could have played rook to f8. That's the defense that is recommended by the Chess Engine. I mean, I was threatening to move this bishop somewhere with tempo and take on f6, so he did need to do something. So the rook defense was maybe a little more economical. Played queen d8, bringing it back to defend. Let's see, I played bishop g4. He went knight takes, pawn takes. He's still keeping the edge through this part, but maybe not as big an edge as he could have had. And then right here, he offers the queen trade. And actually, the queen trade is forced at this point if I don't want to lose. So taking, though, reduces black's advantage to a point where maybe I can hold this. He still has an edge with these pawns on the queen side, but this could be a draw as well. I have some counterplay over here. So hard to say exactly. The Chess Engine gives a slight edge to black there. So that's how I should have played it. I just didn't want to trade queens, but this is losing, and it really should be game over at this point. I didn't notice my b pawn was hanging after that. Yeah, he can just take that because it's queen. The other thing the queen was doing besides offering the trade was attacking the b pawn. So he just takes it, and now he's just breaking through on the queen side. Let's see. I just brought my rook over to go for counterplay, and now he brings this rook back to f8. So that's a mistake. He may still have the edge after that, but the winning move here, the way that black should have won the game, is to play this other rook. Get those rooks on the seventh there, or the second in this case, and I mean, I could take on f6, and I would have two rooks, give up two rooks for the queen, but he's breaking through on on g2. That comes with check. Actually, yeah, I don't have time to take, right? It's check, check, and mate. So that's a big threat, and there's no good defense for it. So that was the way to defend there. The best defense is a good offense. Instead, he defended with rook f8, and now it's really not so clear. After rook h3, yeah, after rook f8. Well, at first the chess engine thought black was still winning, but as I played out a few moves, the chess engine very quickly went to all zeros. So, and then I would back it up to this point, and so at this point there's just some kind of slight edge for black. So just that one move, and the balance is shifted again to an even game, roughly even. And after rook h3, let's see, he went g5 to shut out the queen and rook coordination on that square. So I played queen a3, and after letting the chess engine think for a while, it rated this as completely even. It just comes up all zeros at this point. So it just means there's no good defense here. My queen is coming in. I mean, well, he could play some defensive moves like this, but anyway, it seems like I have enough counterplay, and it's all even. He tried rook b4 here. Maybe he wants to just get the rook. Well, he's counterattacking. He's counterattacking here, and also the rook here is no longer needs to be defended by the queen. So the queen is freed up to move elsewhere. But now he's open for this check, and his defense of rook f7 doesn't work because of this counter check. That's a neat trick if you haven't seen that. That's one you should definitely have in your little bag of tricks. So the king has to take. If the king just moves away, then he's losing that rook, and he's also getting mated. So that's no good. So the king has to take, and then you take here with check, and now his next move loses the game. His king had to go to h8, and this just allows a perpetual. I don't have anything better here. Black still has this majority of pawns on the queen side, so if the pieces come off, then black will win. So I have to just go for the perpetual check there. So this should have been a draw at this point, but instead he went king to h6, and after rook takes f6, he's losing the queen to. In order to stave off the mate, he's losing the queen, and there's just not enough counterplay here left for him. So that's how the game ended. He resigned at this point. Anyway, a nice back and forth game. Hope you enjoyed the tactics there, and I will see you next time. Bye.